Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf, Kesubos Tesvav. We are holding at the Mishnah, which is on Yudalad Amid Beis, around 8 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yosi, Masa, there was an incident between Noikis with a young girl, Shiyarda Lamalois, Mayim Mina'ayin. She went down to the spring to draw some water. This spring was right outside the city. Venenza, and a fellow was involved with her physically, forcefully. So the question is regarding her status vis-a-vis marrying a Kohen. Who was this fellow? Was this fellow Yisrael kosher? Although acted inappropriately, but he's a proper Yisrael, in which case this interaction would not disable her from marrying a Kohen, or perhaps was he a apostle, an Eved, a Mamzer, a Nasan, maybe a guy? In which case, this incident would make her disabled with respect to marrying a Kohen. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Nuri. It depends. Imroiv anshe ha'ir ma'asin l'kuhuna. If most people in this city marry off to Kohanim, meaning their wives or daughters are able to marry a Kohen, which basically indicates that these fellows are kesherim. So most of the population in town is kosher, then we can follow the roiv factor, the majority factor. Harizu tenas lekahuna. So then we can assume that this fellow who got involved with this tinnigus was as well an adam kosher, in which case she can proceed and marry a kohen. Amalei Rava Rav Nachman. I don't understand the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda ben Nuri, who says that if we have a roiv in her favor, she remains kosher. Rabbi Yehuda ben Nuri de Amar Keman. Whose shita is he following? We had a machlekes in the last couple of days when we have a suffix with respect to the status of an isha, pasal to kohen, kasha to kohen. Rabbi Gamliel says that we trust her when she says, "I'm kosher." Rabbi Yeshua says we have to consider the worst possible situation and fear the worst, make her pasal kahuna. So who's Rabbi Yechanan following? Rabbi Yechanan, who says that there's a roiv in her favor, her status remains kosher. Keman, whose shita are we following? Ikir Rabbi Gamliel. Is it Rabbi Gamliel? Afilu b'roiv psulin nami machshar. Even if you have most candidates who are pasul, most people here are avodim, mamzerim, etc. Nami machshar. Even in such a case, Rabbi Gamliel would go by the Isha's word, and Tosfos learns that over here we're speaking that she's confident about the fact that this fellow is an Adam kosher. So that alone should allow her to maintain her status, keep her kosher. You don't need roiv to support it. Ike Rabbi Yeshua. On the other hand, Rabbi Yeshua holds, afilu brave ksherim nami pasal. If you're following him, then even if you have most ksherim, most potential candidates being kosher people, it still would not help her in any bit, because when it comes to yichus related issues, we fear the worst. So how come in this case, because there's a roiv, she's kosher? Amar lei, Rav Nachman responds, we could be following even Rabbi Yeshua's shita. Typically, we fear the worst, but over here it's different, because over here we have a double majority, a double roiv factor in her favor. Hachi Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav was quoted by Rabbi Yehuda as explaining the Mishnah as follows: Vikroines, during the wagons, Shol Tzipori of the town Tzipori, meaning it was the market day, where there were groups of people, caravans coming from far and wide. Hayamasa, that's when the story occurred. And there were many, many people who as well are mostly ksherim. So you have most inhabitants of this town are kosher, plus you have most of the visitors being kosher as well. It's a double roiv factor, a double majority in her favor, and that allows her to maintain her kashrus status, even according to Rabbi Yeshua, who typically fears the worst. Here it's different. Rav Ami, as Rav Ami explained as well, provided that there was a group, a caravan of people, of visitors, ksher, who are kosher, Oyveres Lasham passing by, So if you have a kosher group of people passing by, you have another reason, another element in her favor. Ukta Rabbi Yana, as Rabbi Yana explained as well. The Rabbi Yana, Nive'elas bekroinis kshera. If the actual incident took place on the wagons, then it's okay. Kshera l'kahuna. What do you mean bekroinis al kadaydach on the wagon? That's why she's kosher. Why is that a determinant factor? Ella, rather he meant like this: Nive'elas b'sh'as kroinis kshera l'kahuna. If this incident takes place while there are wagons and caravans and visitors coming to the market, so then we have a whole group of possible potential candidates as well, aside from the local residents. And since that group of visitors are ksherim, or mostly ksherim, you have two reasons, two factors in her favor. Either the perpetrator was local, a local resident, Rav ksherim, or a foreigner, who are also mostly ksherim. Aval pirish echad mitzipari. But let's say you know for sure that the fellow who executed this act was a local resident from Tzipori, Ubal, and he got involved with the Isha Havlat Shtuki. In this case, you cannot consider her and the child to be kosher. The child is an unknown, unidentified child, perhaps puzzle. Why? Because when you know it's a local fellow who perpetrated this act, then although Roiv, local residents, are fine, but it's only a single Roiv. You don't have the other Roiv to combine it with. When you don't know who the fellow was, could be a local, could be a visitor, then you have two roivs in her favor. But when it's only one possibility, a local resident, it's only one roiv, she's not kosher. Kiha, as such, the Chi'as Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, Amar Ze'ira Amar Rav Chanina, he quoted Ze'ira in the name of Rav Chanina. Some say it was directly Amar Ze'iri in the name of Amar Rabbi Chanina, without Rav Dimi. Hoilchen achar roiv ha'ir, V'ein hoilchen achar roiv sia. You want to be masha the isha? You can follow. You can base your din by following the roiv coming from the city. So if most of the local residents were kosher, you could be okay. But v'ein hoilchen achar roiv sia, you can't follow the majority factor inherent in this group, in this visitor group. Why? Klape laya. Which direction are we going if anything, just the opposite? The roiv factor associated with the siya, who are visitors, who are not local, or not established people, they're mobile. In that case, roiv applies more than when we're focusing on the local residents who are sort of established, set in their place. We'll see that. We'll explain this in a minute. So in any case, Klape, in which direction lie? In which direction are you going? Where is the direction? That's the literal translation. Klape, where to where lie is the direction. Meaning, if anything, the arrows are pointing the other way. Hani naidi. The visitors are moving about. In which case, the concept of roiv is applicable. Because it's a group. You view them as one entity, one unit, one equation, right? All these people are moving around. The group of visitors are treated as one entity, and they all relate to each other. It's all part of one entity, in which case, roiv, the majority entity, the majority factor in that entity, determines the status. Status of whom? Of a fellow who's separated from that entity. Most likely, he came from the majority element within that entity, right? So, Hani Naidi, the visitors are moving around, in which case, Roiv can apply. Vahani Kvi Ivikaimi, as opposed to the local residents, they're set and established in their places. Everyone in their home, who you don't relate, every fellow stands alone, independently, doesn't relate to the next fellow in the next home, in which case they can't really join and combine as a single entity, in which case you can't apply the Roiv concept, because Reuben has nothing to do with Shimon and Shimon with Reuben. They're not one entity, in which case the Roiv element of that entity prevails. That's the concept of Kavua, which the Gemara will elaborate on a bit further. When it comes to something which is set, established, pinned to its place, that cannot. He cannot contribute to the general equation, which would create a rive. So, if anything, the group, the travelers, are more prone to the concept of rive and than the local residents. Ella rather explains the Gemara like this: Holchen achar rive ha'ir. We can follow the rive of the city, provided you have another rive on top of it. You have this group of people who are mostly okay. So when you combine the two rives, the double rive, double majority, then you're okay. But one rive on its own is not sufficient. You can't follow rive ha'ir on its own. Meaning, let's say that the perpetrator came from the local residents. That's not enough. Even though you have a rive, that's not enough. And likewise, if you know for a fact that the fellow arrived from this group, so although you have a rive within that group who are okay people, that's not enough. You need a double majority. So basically, you're not sure where this fellow came from here or from there. Either way, there's rive. Then you can work with that and determine his kashrus and the isha's kashrus. My time of why? What's the rationale behind this whole calculation? Answers the Gemara. There's a gzera, there's a concern. Roiv si'a atu roiv ha'ir. If we'll suffice with the roiv factor present within this group of people, so if a fellow from the visitors perpetrated this act and the visitors are mostly okay, you consider that to be fine. Gzeira roiv si'a atu roiv ha'ir. That might lead you to do the same when it comes to the city. Right? If you know it's a local resident, and most of the locals are fine, Roiv says it's fine. This might lead to that. And what's wrong with that? It's also Roiv. V'Roiv ir nami. Even if you're focusing on the city itself and establishing your halacha and your attitude based on the Roiv factor inherent in the city itself, what's wrong with that? Idaka azli inhu legaba. Suppose one of the locals approached this tinoikis. That's okay, because most likely he was kosher, called a parish. When an item, or in this case a person, separates from the bunch, meruba parish, the halacha tells you follow Raiv. The assumption is he came from the majority element within that equation. And if Raiv people are kosher, this fellow is deemed kosher as well. So what's wrong with following Raiv ha'ir on its own? Apparently the concern is the ka'az la'i l'gabayhu. Perhaps it might happen that she will have approached one of the local residents in their home. Now Roiv will not apply. The Havale Kavua, because this fellow is established, is set in his home. Rab Zera teaches us, when we have a Kavua, what happens? No Roiv. Kol Kavua, Kim Mechza Mechza Dami, is treated like 50-50. You can't any longer follow the Roiv element. I've explained before, because when you have a mixture, or you have a group of people traveling, they identify with each other, they relate to each other, they're not set in their independent abode, so to speak. They connect, they relate, they're part of the same equation. Right? So not necessarily because they're one group, just mean to say that they're not set in their own homes. They're just like random, factors. So Roiv tells you follow the majority element within those random factors, right? Because it's all considered one equation, and 51% prevails. Most likely, this thing that arrives here is from the 51%. It's from the majority. After all, majority has more potential, right? So when we're dealing with this group of people who are not kavua, sure, if one of them separates and does this act, and we're speaking about a group who are mostly kosher, you could assume this parish, Mozmiruba parish, separated from the majority element within that equation. But the concern is that next time, we might apply that rationale to the city itself. If she approaches a local resident in his home, well then you cannot say Rav because he's Kavua, he stands alone, he's independent, doesn't relate to the other factors, and therefore cannot connect and create a single comprehensive equation, in which case Rav has no meaning. Rav of what? I'm alone. And you're alone, and he's alone. So that's why the Gemara tells us, and explains the Mishnah as well. Rabbi Yochanan Nuri required a double Rav to be machshir this Tanaikas. The city was mostly okay, and the visitors were mostly okay, and we don't even know who did what. So this double Rav factor allows us to make her kosher. And again, the calculation of Cheshbon was because we want to avoid kavua, and if we are to just be machshir the isha based on the Rav in the city, it might end up being a kavua in certain cases. So we insist that there be another Rav as well, the group of people visiting, in which case now people will never come to be machshir when there is a kavua kemechza mechza dami. Asks the Gemara, Umi ba'in and trei rubi? Is that so that we always require a double Rav? One Rav is not enough? But Tanya, listen to this brayso. Teisha Chanuya is a classic case. You have 9 stores. Kulan moichro is basar shchuto, selling kosher meat. V'achas meichera is basar nevela. You have one store in the city selling non-kosher meat. V'lokach ma'achas man. And he went and he purchased meat from one of these stores. If any yedeya me'ezim hen lokach, he's unsure which store he bought the meat from. He's not sure, was it a kosher store or non-kosher store? Sveikei asur. In this case, the suffix makes asur. Why? Because since he approached the store, he entered the store, he went into the makaim of the meat. That's called kavua. A store is a separate establishment, independent of the next store, especially when they're in competition. No, that's not the point. The point is that it was established in its makaim. It's not like he found it, rolling in the street. The makaim of the basar is called kavua. Each makam has its own identity, its own independent identity, and doesn't relate to the next makam. In which case, the fact that there are mostly kosher stores in town has no relevance on this specific location. This specific store, which stands alone, is identified on its own, and therefore it's a suffix deraisa. You go l'chumra uba nimtza. But let's say he encounters a piece of meat lying in the street. We're not sure where it came from. Certainly in that case, the majority is what determines. Most likely, this thing is kosher, right? There's more potential for kosher meat in the city than non-kosher, so we follow the Rav. Bottom line is, you follow Rav without a double Rav factor. Perhaps you'll say there is a double Rav factor there, because aside from the local meat supply, there is the global meat supply, and that, let's say, we're speaking that there is mostly kosher meat in the vicinity, in the state, in the country. Perhaps you'll say, we're speaking that literally the gates of the local city were not locked, meaning that the import meat and the global meat supply will actually arrive at this city as well. The ka'asila ruba me'alma, so most of the meat out there, ruba mi'alma, is kosher, right? So you have the local Rav, which is kosher, and the foreign imported Rav, which is kosher as well. So you have a double Rav. Is that what you need to determine kashrus? That's incorrect. This halach would apply even if the gates are locked. Basically, no importing. There's no access to the global meat supply. The local Rav is enough to make it kosher. So you see, one Rav is enough. Why do we insist, in the case of the Tinoikis, with the kashrus l'kahuna, that we need a double Rav? Mala, asu, b'yaychs. It's a mala. We're keeping higher standards when it comes to yichus, when it comes to enabling an isha to marry a kohen. We take into account all kinds of concerns and considerations, and gzeres and takanais, which aren't necessarily typically applied. So bottom line is, the reason why we were machshir the Tinoikis was only because the locals were mostly okay, and the foreigners who arrived on that day were also mostly okay, and since we can combine both Ravs, she maintains her kashrus. And this is a special high standard applied to yichus, to lineage, with respect to marrying a kohen. Want to keep things pure and confirmed. Gufa, let's go back to the concept of kavua and elaborate on it further. What is it? How do we know it? Where does it come from? Amar Abzeiro, kol kavua kemechza mechza dami. When you have something kavua, set, established in its place, it doesn't necessarily relate to the rest of the equation, and you can't combine it and create a roiv. So it's considered like 50-50. Bein lekula, bein lechumr, whether the kavua concept generates a kula, meaning the roiv would dictate chumrah, and kavua comes and undoes that and allows you to be mekel, bein lechumrah. Or if it's having a reverse effect, the roiv would say, go be mekel, and the kavua says, no, you have to be machmer. Either way, kavua is an established halacha and turns everything into 50-50. Menole, the Reb Zera, how does Reb Zera know this halacha? Is there a Mishnah, a Brisa, which presents this halacha? Menole, the Reb Zera, Ilema Mitesha Chanuyos. Is it from the Brisa of the 9 stores? Kulan Moichres Basar Shchuta, who sell kosher meat, Achas Basar Nevela, one selling non-kosher meat. V'lokach machas, many purchase from one, Ve'ini Adem Ezem, and Lokach, not sure which one. Sveika Asr is considered a safek, which is Asr. Ubet Nimtza. And you find it in the street. Halech Acha Roiv, you follow the majority, whatever it is. Bottom line is, you have a city with mostly kosher, only one non-kosher store. Since he's not sure where he purchased, he didn't find it in the street, he approached the Makim Kviyas. He has to treat it as an equally balanced suffix. So bottom line is, kavua is considered 50-50. Yeah, hasam l'chumrah. There we see that kavua makes a chumrah. It's supposed to be kosher. If we follow the roiv stores, kavua turns it into isser. Okay, l'chumrah maybe yes, but how do you know kavua can actually take something which should be asr if you follow the majority and make it mutar? Ela metishat sfardim v'sheretz echad b'neihen. We know that certain specific creatures, like a lizard, etc., are matame a person upon contact. So let's say he has 9 frogs that are not considered sherets, right? V'sheretz echad b'neihem. There's one sheret which has the potential to be matame, mixed in amongst the 9. So you have 9 and 1. 9 are tahar, 1 is tummy. They're all dead, right? V'naga be'echad, and he touched one of them. Ve'eino yedea be'ezmi naga, unsure which one he touched. Sveikei tamei, it's considered tamei. What do you mean? Most chances are that I touched something which is tar. I touched a tzardea, which is not metame. Why am I tamei? Oh, because there's one lizard sitting there, kavua, that turns it into 50-50. Hasanami l'chumra. That's another example of chumra. I'm trying to prove kula, not chumra. Ella metisha shratza. There's another brisa which reverses the scenario. 9 shratzim, items which can transmit to one. There's one sfardeh which is not metami, mixed in amongst them. He touched one of them. Not sure which one he touched. So what is the halacha? We know that a suffix tuma which occurs in a rishus hayachad, a private domain, is considered tamei. B'shus harabim sveika tamei. If it took place in a public domain, it's considered tar. Sveika tar. Question is, we're speaking about 90% chance that he touched something which is tamei. 9 shratzim versus 1 sfardea. Why is it considered a classic case of suffix tamei b'shus harabim, which is tar? It's not a suffix. It's overwhelmingly tamei. It's 9-1 tamei. Oh, answer is kavua. The tzvardei is kavua, and he turns it from 90% tamei to 50-50. So we see that kavua can actually be implemented even lekula. Umudaraisa minolan. How do we know this concept from a pasuk from the Torah? Amakra v'arav lo yivakam olav. Pasuk said he ambushed him and he struck him and he killed him. Why do we have the word v'arav loy? What's loy coming to teach us? Achi yiskavan loy. He must intend to kill this person. But if he intends Ruvain and he kills Shimon, that's okay. That's not okay, but that's not chayiv. He's not chayiv misa. That's Reb Shimon's shita. Rabbanan disagree with that halacha. Rather, they learn the pasuk differently. to teach us the halacha of kavua. Amri dvir Rav Yani, in the Beis Medrash of Rav Yani, they explain like this. What is varav loy coming to teach you? Prat, it's coming to exempt lezurik evan legoy. Goy here means two, amongst, not a guy is supposed to eat. It means he throws it randomly on a group of people and strikes one of them and kills him. He's pater. Now before we get to explain, let's just see what the case is. What are the circumstances here? Echidami, what are we speaking? You have a group of people, 9 are non-Jews and 1 is a Yisrael. V'echad Yisrael by name, right? Amongst them a Yisrael. He tossed a rock and killed the Yisrael. The pasuk seems to tell us that he's pater because it was unintended. He threw it into a group of people. He's pater. Why do we need a pasuk for that? That patur is simple, is evident, is obvious. V'tepik lei, it's evident because what kind of group was it? It was 9 Kananim. 9 Kananim is a rive. The Rubba Kananim Ninu, since most likely he was going to hit a Kanani, he's not responsible for what he did. Not allowed to, but it means to say there's no Chiyav Misa. It's not considered like having killed a Yid with intent. So even without this new pasuk of Arav Loi, Raiv would dictate that he's pater. Inami, or Palgo Paga. Let's say it would be 50-50. 5 Kananim and 5 Yisraelim. He would still be pater because you can't prove that he intended on killing a Yisrael. Safek nefashis lahaka. When it comes to capital punishment, you go lakula. So without any pasuk, he would be pater. Leitzricha apparently was speaking that the factors were overwhelmingly to his detriment. The Ikatisha Yisraelim, there were 9 Yisraelim standing together with 1 Kanani, Ukanani Echad B'neim. So Raiv would tell us to hold him accountable. Look, he took a rock, he tossed it into a group of people who are 90% Yisraelim. What are the chances that you can hit the Yisrael? 90%. So that mice is considered as though he intended on killing a Yisrael. Most likely, you're going to kill a Yisrael. You're chayiv. The pasuk is telling you otherwise. V'arav loy. Unless you actually tossed it directly on the Yisrael, you're pater. Meaning, even though you had 9 Yisraelim standing with just 1 Kanani, you're pater. And the point of the pasuk is kavua. Da'avalei Kanani kavua, because the Kanani standing amongst this group is a kavua established within the group. V'chol kavua k'mechza mechza dami. When we have a kavua, it's like 50-50. In which case, you can't be mechayev him. You can hold him accountable. He threw a rock, which had a 50% chance of killing Yisrael. You can't do anything to him. Oh, so it is from this pasuk of Arav Loi where we learn this amazing concept of kol kavua. When you have a group of items which are perhaps mostly leaning in one direction or mostly in the other direction, but there is one element there, and we're talking about their kavua, they're set and established and firm kavua, and each one is sort of looked at independently. Each one is handled separately. They don't connect, they don't form a cohesive single entity, single equation, in which case Roiv is a non-factor. Roiv means a majority element within this equation. Well, there's no equation to speak about. There are separate units, separate individuals. Itma we learned. Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav. So he quotes Rav as follows. Halacha Rabbi Yosi. We follow Rabbi Yosi that in the story with the Tinoikis, with the incident with the Oinus, she's kasha l'kahuna. Rav Chana bar Rava Amar Rav, he quoted Rav a bit differently. Hayra sha'ohaisa. We're speaking about an unusual case. It was just an exception. It was hayra shah, an exception, a psak related to that specific incident. Rashi says perhaps there were other factors at play as well. There was other rayas to consider, other factors in her benefit, in which case we concluded that she's kosher. Even though there was just one roiv, that's what he learns. There's only one roiv. But typically we need 2 roiv factors to make her kosher. Asks the Gemara, how could you say that Rav considered this Tinoikas to be kosher just based on one Rav? That's what the Gemara is thinking now. That Rav, who said Hara Shah, he learned that was speaking that there was only one Rav, not like the Gemara until now. There was a double Rav. You have one single Rav, a local Rav, local townspeople are kosher. That Rav is enough. Master Rav Yirmi, how can you say that? When it comes to yichas, when it comes to lineage, you need purity. You need a double Rav factor. You can't even risk the chance of running into kavua, as the Gemara explained. You need a double Rav to dispel any concerns, to preempt any chashashos. You mean to say when it comes to yichas, you don't need a double Rav? That's not have a Mishnah which indicates otherwise. The Rav himself holds that by yichus you need two Ravs. Matzah batinek mushtach. Walking through a town, you see an abandoned child, abandoned baby. It's a town that has Yisraelim living there, Goyim living there. How do we identify this child? Is he a Yisrael? Is he a Goy? Im Rav Ovid Kechav. If most residents in town are Goyim, Ovid Kechav, we determine that this baby is a Goy. Im Rav Yisrael, mostly are Jewish. Yisrael, he's determined to be a Yisrael. Mechza, it's 50-50. Yisrael, here as well, the child is considered a Yisrael. Vamar Rav, and Rav added, Lo Yishanu. This halacha that Rav Yisrael allows us to consider the child as a Yisrael, and you need a Rav to make him a Yisrael. Lo Yishanu alalach yoseh. It only pertains to the mitzvah of Bezdin to support the child. Rashi brings a pasuk, v'chei achicha imach. You have to sustain and support your fellow Jew. So if Rav, local townspeople are Yisraelim, you can be rest assured this child is Yisrael. You have to feed him and sustain him. Aval le'yochsen. When it comes to yichus, Rav is not enough. You need a double Rav. So let's say she's a girl, you can't allow her to marry a kohen. You have to have absolute confirmation that she's kosher. One Rav is not enough. Aval le'yochsen loy. U'shmuel amar l'fakech l'v'sagal. Shmuel says that this, that we consider him a Yisrael based on Rav Yisrael, and that's in order to save his life on Shabbos. So he's buried under a fallen, collapsed building, so we can clear the rubble to save him on Shabbos. Provided that it's established that he's a Yisrael based on the Rav in town. Bottom line is, back to Rav, who tells us that for Yichus, you need a double majority. So, how could Rav Chanan bar Rava tell us that you don't need a double Rav? Ishtam Nitzei. Rabbi Yirmiyah forgot. Hadam Rabbi Damar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda quotes Rav himself that you do need two Ravs. B'kroinish Shotzipari have a masa. This whole story occurred during the market day. The Kroinis coming into Tzipari were all there, and you have the Rav locals who are kosher and the Rav visitors who are kosher. Of course, you need a double Rav, which is very consistent with Rav in this most recent Mishnah. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. Rav Chana bar Rava Damar. What did Rav Chana bar Rava, who just a minute ago quoted Rav, the Amar Haras Shah that the heter, but the Tinoikas was just an exception based on local circumstances, which sounds like he's saying that the requirement for two Ravs was just a one-time requirement. It wasn't something which is required for all time. And here we see Rav just told us that even for all time, two Ravs is required. Otherwise, you can't be machshir. Kasha, it's a kasha. From Rav right over here, who says that for yichus you need a double Rav, answers the Gemara, man de masniha, loy masniha. There were two different quotes in the name of Rav. Bottom line is, everybody agrees that according to Rav, for Yichus, you need 2 Ravs. Okay, that's a given. And everything can be worked out. Basically, Rav Chanan bar Rava, who says Hara Shahisa, it was just, a one-time exception. He didn't know the other quote, Rav Yehuda Marav, which is back on the Fidal based on the last line, that there were 2 Ravs there. He didn't know that there was a Kroinei Tzitzipuri. He didn't know about that whole story. So according to his version of events, there was no double Rav. There was only one Rav, and the reason why it was mutter, he's quoting Rav, the reason why it was mutter was a Rosh Shad. There was a special reason, special circumstance which gave heter. Other factors involved, other rayas, whatever it is. He doesn't explain what it is. But typically, that's not enough. You need a double Rav, which is exactly like Rav says over here. L'yaychs, you need a double Rav. So just to clarify what happened there, Rav holds for Yichus, we don't suffice with a single Rav. You have to ensure that she's totally kosher. You need a double Rav, as we explained, because otherwise it can lead to confusion, to kavua. We want to avoid any confusion. In order to avert any possibility of kavua being involved, we require a double Rav. Rav in the town and Rav of the visitors. This way you'll never be happy with just Rav in the town, which can end up being a kavua in certain cases, right? So we have a double Rav, addresses any concerns. Now, there's a difference of opinion, a slight difference of opinion as to what happened in the story with the Tanakh, is why was she kosher? Rav Yehuda Marav says because it was a double Rav. That's perfect. That's consistent with Rav Shita. Rav Chanan bar Rava, a name of Rav, learned differently. Typically, you need a double Rav. Here, there was no double Rav, but it was a Rosh Shah. For whatever reason, they allowed it. In this case, they made an exception. But typically, of course, you need Terei Rubi, Mala, Asobiyos. Gufa, let's go back to this halacha. Matzah batinik mushlach, you find an abandoned baby. Im Rav Oived Kechavim. Most residents are goyim. Oived Kechavim. That leads us to conclude that the child is a goy. Im Rav Yisrael. If mostly Yisrael are around, Yisrael, the child is Yisrael. Mechsa 50-50. Yisrael, we treat him as Yisrael. Amar Rav Leishana Lach Yosai. When we consider him a Yisrael, that's only to sustain him. Aval Yochsan Loy. When it comes to Yichus, for that you need more. You need a double Rav. Ushmol Amar, Shmuel says, Lafakech Lavas Rav Yisrael turns him into Yisrael with respect to being Mechal Shabbos to save his life. Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi, is that so that according to Shmuel, he will only save his life if you have a Rav in his favor? A minority is not enough. Even a slight chance of being Yisrael is not sufficient to justify Chilul Shabbos. Really? Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Amar Shmuel, Ein Holchen. B'pikuach nefesh acher haroy. When it comes to matters of pikuach nefesh, saving lives, even if it involves Chilul Shabbos, you ignore the Rav, even if it's just a small chance of saving a Yisrael, that's enough. Sakum over here, he says, you can only save him on Shabbos if he's most likely a Yisrael. Elo ki itmar de Shmuel aresha itmar. We have to rework Shmuel's halacha. It was said on the first part of the Mishnah. Im Rav Oived Kechavim. If most locals are goyim, this child is deemed a goy. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel adds to that, although that's true when it comes to other halachas, when it comes to Chilul Shabbos, for pikuach nefesh pushes everything over. Even if it's most likely that he's a goy, 1% chance that Yisrael is enough to justify Chilul Shabbos to save his life. Okay, that behind us. Let's go back to the Mishnah and analyze all the halachas in the Mishnah. First we say, if most locals are goyim, the baby is considered a goy. Lamai hilchasa, pertaining to what? Certainly not regarding pikuach nefesh. You just told me it has nothing to do with Rav. Amar Papa. When there are Rav goyim in town, you know what it allows us to do? Lachilas nevelis. We can feed him non-kosher food because he is deemed a goy. Im Rav Yisrael. If most locals are Yisrael, this baby is considered Yisrael Lamai hilchasa. What's the point here? Amar Papa, lahachshel hayaveda. You return a lost item to him, which is not something you do to a guy. But if it's mostly Yisrael, he's considered Yisrael as well. Give him back his aveda. Then we say mechza mechza. If it's 50% Yisraelim in town and 50% goyim, Yisrael, the child of Yisrael, l'may hilchasa pertain to what? Certainly not regarding aveda. For that you need a rive. So what is it negaya? What is it relevant to? Amar Shlaksh l'nezaken, pertain to damages. Rashi explains. Let's go to Rashi actually. So it's around 15 lines from the bottom. L'nezaken. The Stam above a comma. We have a Mishnah. Shar shal Yisrael shal nagach l'shar shal Knani potter. For Jewish shar gors a non-Jewish shar potter. V'shar shal Knani shal nagach l'shar shal Yisrael. But if it happens the other way around, a shar a Knani gors a shar of Yisrael, irrespective of his situation, whether he was warned or not warned, whether it's a quirk or it's habitual, bein tam bein muad, mishalom nezek shalom. Yisrael, as opposed to Yisrael, with respect to his fellow Yisrael, that depends on the status of the animal. Tam, if it's just a quirk, Mishalom Chatzinezek, he pays 50% of damage. Umuad, but if it's a habitual situation, after warning, Mishalom Nezek Shalom is responsible for the entire damage. So we have a three-way halacha. Yisrael was Mazak the Goy Potter. A Goy the Yisrael, always full damages. Yisrael to Yisrael, well, depends. Tam 50%, Muad 100%. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara. So we speak about a case where it's 50-50. We consider the child of Yisrael. One afkamina. What's the difference? Amar Shlaksh l'nezaken, pertaining to damages, to these halachas. So when we say we treat him like a Yisrael, basically means he follows the halachas, the guidelines given to Yisrael. Tam is 50%, and Muad would be the Nezek Shalom. Hey Chadami, what exactly occurred? Are we speaking the Nagchi Torah Didan, that our shur, meaning a confirmed Yisrael shur, was negeach, gore, damaged. L'tura didei, his shur, this child, this unidentified child who grew up now and owns a shur. So, if the Yisrael shur damaged his shur, you're telling me that we have to treat him like a Yisrael just because it's 50-50. We have to treat him like a Yisrael and pay for his damages. Why? Lei malei, the damager can tell the damaged, the victim, I see a raya the Yisraelat. You just prove that you're a Yisrael, and you'll take your payment. Until then, I don't owe you a penny. Maybe you're a guy and a Yisrael who gores a guy's shur is pater. Apparently we're speaking the Nagchi Torah Didei l'Torah Didan. His shur was negeach, a regular Yisrael shur. Oh, that's the case in the Mishnah. So now the Yisrael says, look, maybe you're a Kanani. I don't know. Maybe you're a Kanani. So we pay me 100%, like a Kanani who damaged the Yisrael. And the fellow is saying, no, I'm a Yisrael. I don't pay you like a Kanani. I pay you whatever it is, a Tam, 50%, a Muad, Nezek Shalom. And here we're speaking that it was a Tam, right? So the shur was not an habitual gorer. So the fellow who received the damage, he wants 100%. He says, look, you're an unknown, identified individual. Maybe you're a guy. Give me 100%. And the guy responds, look, who says I'm a guy? Maybe I'm a yid. So the Mishnah says, well, it depends. If it's mechza al mechza, in terms of the local residents, it was 50-50. So therefore, I'm 50-50. I'm treated like a Yisrael to a certain extent, which will result in the following equation. Palgam is shalom. So 50% he has to pay. Why? Why does he have to pay 50% of the damages? Because whatever I am, look, I'm the Safek, let's say. I'm the Tinuk Mushlach that now grew up and my shur was Mazik the Yisrael Vade. 50% I have to pay. Because either way, whether I'm a Yisrael, I pay 50%. When my shur was Mazik, my shur Tam was Mazik. And even if he's not a Yisrael, he certainly has to pay. Regarding the other 50%, you're demanding that I pay 100% because you're telling me I'm not a Yisrael. Amalu, he tells them, look, I see, Raya, you proved the Lav Yisrael that I'm not a Yisrael. It's your obligation to prove. You're the Moitzi Mechavirei. Right? The onus is on you. I see, right, the Lav Yisrael, that I'm not a Yisrael, I'll pay you. If you prove that I'm not Yisrael, I give you 100%. Because a guy owes 100%. But until then, I claim I'm a Yisrael. And he has a right to do so because, after all, it's 50-50. So that's the case in the Mishnah. So bottom line is, he's walking through town and finds an abandoned tinoik. So if roiv people are goyim kusim, that's actually the lashon, and the Gemara brings it elsewhere. Roiv kusim. So roiv kusim, it's considered a kusi as well. In which case you can feed him nevela, right? Feed him a nevela. So the bold is what the Gemara clearly speaks about. So when it comes to nevela, feed him a nevela. If it's mechza, right, the 50-50, so then we treat him as a Yisrael, meaning that if he did nezek to Yisrael, he does not have to pay nezek shalom, because he claims he is Yisrael. If most people are Yisraelim, this child is considered Yisrael regarding being machzer aveda to him. Now let's just go back for a second. Roiv kusim, we feed him nevela, but we don't give him back the aveda. And if he is mazik at Yisrael, he gives nezek shalom. When it's mechza is considered Yisrael, you can feed him nevela, and you don't have to give him back his aveda, because it's 50-50. If it's roiv Yisrael, he's treated like a Yisrael, you can't feed him the nevela. And certainly if he does nezek to Yisrael, he conforms to the Yisrael guidelines and pays accordingly. Now, the Gemara did tell us, and Shmuel pointed this out, that when it comes to Pekuach Nefesh, we take exception in all cases. We will do anything to save his life, even on Shabbos. Because even for a small, minute chance that he might be a Yisrael, that justifies Chilul Shabbos on his behalf. Hadran Aloch, Besula Nisis. Okay, before we go, let's just recap the Gemara in Amud Aleph as well. So we had a case of a Tinoikis who was involved with this fellow. We're not sure who he is. Rabbi Yechim Nuri tells us, don't worry, she's kasha l'kahuna, because if roiv the anshi ha'ir are ksherim, we can apply the roiv to her as well. The Gemara concludes in the name of Rav, this only works when we have a double roiv. We have a group of people who happen to visit on that day who are also mostly ksherim, and we're not going to suffice with just one roiv. That's not going to be enough. So let's say it's just a question of the local townspeople, that's not enough. If it's just a question of the visitors, he came from them, that's not enough. We need a fellow who came from either of these two, unidentified, unknown. He can be either from the local residents, who are mostly kosher, either from the the market shoppers. So since you don't know which roiv he comes from, you can apply the two roivs together. And the point of the Gemara was, we're afraid that if we suffice with just one roiv, you might actually rely on the local roiv, and it might actually be a case where it was kavua, because she visited them in their home, in which case each fellow stands alone is kavua, and then you're in trouble. It's not considered a roiv. It's mechza dummies. Therefore, to preempt this type of situation, we require, aside from the local roiv, another roiv as well, which will ensure that we never run into a question of kavua. Now, on the topic of roiv, the Gemara does tell us that when it's something which is just roaming around, it's parish, then we assume it came from the roiv. So if you find a piece of meat in the street, you follow the roiv meat supply in town. But if it's something kavua, like it's relating to the actual source of the meat, the store, etc., where it's established that it's a set entity, then we can't combine it with the other elements and form an equation, in which case we just say, plain suffix, you never know, 50-50, and this applies even to kula. For instance, we have two cases. You have a group of shratzim, 9 shratzim, and 1 sfardeya, and you don't know which one you touched. The sfardeya is called kavua. He turns it from mostly tamei to 50-50. Likewise, he tosses a stone into a group of people, mostly Yisraelim, 1 Kanani, called kavua, mechza. It's treated like 50-50, in which case he's not chayiv. We concluded with a Mishnah of Tinaik, which was found in the street, and all the halachas pertaining to that. Hadron Lach Psula Nises, all the best to you and much hatzlacha.